We have your normal cast of characters, which is me and Ben. I'm Skin. He's Ben. We're the Ben and Skin show here in the DF Dub on the Mighty Eagle. And the dudes that are really leading the way, as always, from Balcones, the man himself, the distiller that makes it happen, Jared, and then our man in the streets, Alex, who is brand advocate and just a man that loves the spirits. Gentlemen, I'm excited to be back here again. I truly look forward to this every time we do it. So I guess before we start sipping a little bit, I'll start with you, Jared. How's your life been going since the last time we hooked up on this little internet webinar chat?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of business as usual. We're cranking out blends and trying to get whiskey going. We've got new products in development all the time, as you guys know. So
yeah,
in some ways it hasn't really been that crazy different. It's just been a little bit busier. I haven't been traveling, but everything else has been pretty much the same. So
what about you, Mr. Elrod?
I mean, similar, but it is, being in Dallas, we are opening up some bars and restaurants.
Yeah.
Obviously kind of what phase one, phase 1.5, 1.7, what, I don't know what we're on, but, kind of still social distancing, but you're checking up on customers around the area, mostly liquor stores, just seeing how things are going, obviously not traveling either. But it's been nice because we've been able to reconnect with a lot of people, and just kind of get glued back into what's going on, feet on the street. Also before, since the spotlight's on me, hey, happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Cheers to you.
Yeah. Cheers to me. In fact, that might be a good place to jump in. On this episode, we're going to be focusing on the True Blue 100 and the Brimstone, but we might start off by telling everybody a little bit about the Rumble, and that's what we'll maybe toast for my birthday. Thank you for doing that, Mr. Elrod. I'm closing in on 50 right
Damn. This is your 50th pour? Is that what you said?
That's my 50th pour tonight. This is the Rumble, and this is the one that I don't really fully know how to describe to people what it is other than a fine Texas spirit. And Jared, I want to know what the inspiration is for the Rumble. And I want you to tell me how I need to describe it to my friends when they're going to imbibe.
Yeah, Rumble's not an easy one to talk about. I mean, we don't make a ton of it, but it is one of the first things we laid down. I think on one of the other episodes, I talked about how we started doing corn and Rumble, even though the goal was malt, partly just because of equipment issues and our mash tun wasn't functional. Rumble was inspired by a dessert sauce at one of the many dinners we had with friends and family, dreaming up the distillery and thinking about making whiskey eventually. Mm-hmm. And one of my previous partners would made a bananas Foster, and this was the sauce was the base ingredients that are in Rumble. So it's
is that right?
Raw sugar, mission figs, and wildflower honey.
So is turbinado, that's raw sugar? And the reason I ask is because all the most decadent smoothies that I love at Smoothie King have turbinado. That is.
Yeah, I think turbinado and demerara, I think, are technically a little bit different. And I'll probably have someone shoot a comment that knows more than me that's listening. But they're both, moderately raw sugars, if not completely raw, chunky. We're just eating that dessert sauce, and somebody said, hey, you know what? This would make a great spirit. We should distill this.
And it is a great spirit. It's very unique. Ben, I know you like to have gatherings during non-pandemic times out there in Light Farms. Has the Rumble been a hit out there with the folks in the on the farm?
So there's a very nice bar in the neighborhood in Light Farms. It's called the Nook. Ooh. And
they got good food too.
Yeah, they got really good food, and they've got some all-star bartenders, and they really enjoy making craft cocktails. And they're not just, following some simple recipe. They're scientists about it, and they love Balcones. They make a ton of cocktails with the rye, but they really enjoy the Rumble. And those are the guys who turned me on to it. And you don't have, if you like cocktailing, I know that not all whiskey people like cocktailing. For me, I do. I love to drink an old fashioned. To me, I always describe this as for me, it's in my wheelhouse of I could just drink this on ice and it feels like it's already en route to being a cocktail. Like it doesn't taste as it's not whiskey purist style whiskey. It's I feel like it's made for me. It's got that extra sweetness, and dessert sauce is actually the name of my autobiography. So it's perfect for me.
Alex, Rumble has like a little cult following too, right? I mean, the people that are into it are really, really into it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's funny. We are also going to, look at Brimstone as well, because I think of all the whiskeys and spirits that and rum that we make, Rumble and Brimstone have probably two of the strongest cult followings, where people, when they fall in love with Rumble, half the time they just forget we actually make whiskey and we prefer whiskey at the end of the day. And so, like Jared, said, this is no offense to Rumble, and I know we're speaking to a lot of ears. It's really low on the totem pole of production percentage. Right. So we don't make that much of it, but stylistically, it's kind of a rum brandy hybrid because of sugar, because of the fruit in its simplest form. It's a bit of a hybrid that we treat just like we would most of our whiskeys. And so for the longest time, there's a great place in San Antonio called the Boiler House in the Pearl District, the old Pearl Brewery.
That's a great part of town.
Phenomenal place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you feel like you're in some other country. It's amazing. It's tucked away down there, right? They were going through, it was something insane, like 300 or 400 bottles a year of Rumble, because it was in their Rumble Old Fashioned. So
wow.
And 94 proof, I still think it's incredibly drinkable. It's still quite complex, as simple as it can sometimes be, and as confusing as it can be. It's pretty cool.
Since you brought it, we are gonna talk whiskey, and we are gonna move to the True Blue 100 next. But since you brought up the Pearl District, and I know that Jared's a Spurs fan, if you're ever in that neck of the woods and you are in San Antonio and you want to go down there, there's a really great spot called Cured. And I have been there 3 times now. And 2 of the 3 times I was there, a member of the San Antonio Spurs organization was there as well, just dining. It's one of the places in San Antonio that Pop likes to go. And if you don't know the history, Greg Popovich is a legendary connoisseur of fine wine and great food. And he plans, his team bonding are on these trips where they go to special restaurants and stuff. So if you're a Spurs fan like Jared, or you just want a great experience and you are in the Pearl District, I do recommend Cure. That is a really, really kick-ass spot. Jared, go ahead.
I just wanted to say this before you move on from Rumble. I'm going to say this a couple times tonight. It's going to sound very redundant, but Rumble and Brimstone are both in the mix with me, with Baby Blue, for being my favorite offerings from Balcones.
All right.
So I'm going to sound like that guy. This is my favorite. Well, this is my favorite. But just know these are all some of my favorites. So I couldn't be happier about tonight. And I haven't tried this yet, the True Blue 100. So I'm stoked about that. But
cool.
So far, 2 of those other 3, my favorites so far.
Well, then what do you guys think? Do you want to go on a maiden voyage here? Ben's maiden voyage with the True Blue 100?
Yeah, let's do it. True Blue. TB Hunnit.
All right.
Are the letters backwards on my screen? I can't tell if they are. Is it spelled backwards, or does it spelled the right way?
Okay, so it's spelled backwards on mine, isn't it?
Why am I backwards?
Okay.
Everybody else looks straight to me. I look backwards.
So y'all are all forward and I'm backwards on mine.
I think it shows us on our own screens backwards, but when it goes out to everyone else, it's the right way.
What a great prank. Okay, so let's boogie. Ben brought up the Baby Blue. So as we check the nose on this, why don't you tell us, Jared, how much is the True Blue related to the Baby Blue? Are they pretty close cousins here?
Yeah, it's kind of just when Baby gets to spend more time in barrel. Obviously, the proof's a little bit higher, a lot more barrel contact time, and you hear all these stories. There's a lot of marketing about great grandfather's recipe, or these lost barrels that were in the corner of a warehouse that everybody forgot about. But we have 2 products that's absolutely true. And that's probably just because I managed the warehouse at the time and I did a poor job of staying on top of things. we had some barrels that we literally just kind of forgot about and didn't check for a while. And when we checked them, obviously, if you have smelled this or tasted this yet, this is not baby. You can't make baby with this. You just can't undo that amount of wood and spice and extra maturation. So by the time we tasted it, we were like, well, oops, we forgot to check those. We probably would have used those in a blend a long time ago if we had paid better attention. But they literally were under a desk up against a wall. And so once we found them, we actually started doing the True Blue cast strength version, which we don't even do all the time. I think we do usually like once a year, not even every once a year. He's got a single barrel of it. So then we did a cast strength release first, and there's a lot of 100 proof bourbons out there. Obviously with Bottled and Bond, there's a lot of 100 proof bourbons, and we kept getting dinged in reviews by bourbon guys that the cast strength was just too hot. And then with a little water, it opened up really nicely. So kind of as a joke and a little bit of spite, we diluted it down to 100 proof, got label approval, sent this out just to have some of those same guys be like, man, see, this is what I always knew it could be good. Like, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so my usual joking response is that we're happy to sell you water.
Right. Well, what is the proof of the cast strength?
It varies by batch. So it's usually over 64, 65 plus.
Okay.
But cast strength whiskey, once again, any Scotch drinker knows this. And I think bourbon nerds today know this, but especially 9 years ago, people see cast strength bottles on the shelf and they think that that's what we're telling them they should drink it that way. And it really is. Some people do like it that way, but it's definitely implied you can dilute it to whatever you want. That's the beauty of it, right? You can drink it a little hot, a little bit diluted. You can do whatever you want. So the 100 proof came about almost as an accident, just kind of responding to critics like, fine, I'll dilute it for you. And
Right.
Yeah, there we go. That's great.
Are you happy now? You know, is you look at the bottle, the distinction on here, straight corn whiskey. So I'll ask you, Alex, first of all, what is the distinction of a straight whiskey, and why is True Blue 100 a straight corn whiskey?
Well, I think at the very simplest form, straight means minimum 2 years old. Age statement to a certain degree, of course, is important. Whereas, baby blue is going to be a little more youthful, which I think is pretty evident. Even when you look at the color of the whiskey, obviously you're going to see a lot less of that kind of rich wood sugar apparent by the color. So baby blue, even though it is getting considerably older, it is still a very youthful spirit. So it's incredibly corn forward. True Blue being at least 2 years, it qualifies for the straight delineation. But I think it then has, because of that, it has a lot more of that rich, round barrel character to it. That is, that kind of it settles down the corn presence, brings some of that deep, rich wood sugar to it, even though it's still in used American oak, and it kind of balances things a little bit. And so to me, this is, I'll say it here, hot take, this is the most underrated whiskey we have in our core lineup, because it oftentimes gets lumped in as it's over on the side. We've got the core four is what we call it, internally, baby blue, single malt, rye, pot still bourbon. But I think this is really underrated, whiskey for us.
Ben will tell you, when we first started doing stuff with you guys, I latched on to the True Blue pretty quick. It's, I guess, it's the baby blue goes off to college or something. But I definitely, this was one of the first ones I dug. I mean, I'm still a huge fan of the Texas single malt, but this is a great whiskey. It's really
so good. Yeah, a couple of teachable moments. So all corn whiskey has to go into used barrels. So the way we do the corn whiskeys is a little bit more similar to how barrel stocks and maturation gets managed in Scotland, where also everything's getting in used barrels. So you're tracking how many times you've used barrels. You're tracking how long they've had spirit in them. You're keeping notes when barrels get used for baby, for example. If it took 3 years to get ready and it was still super, super light, obviously that's never going to make True Blue. So you're kind of figuring out a kind of way of rotating as used barrels are available, what to put in them and what you think they'll be able to become. If a barrel's used up enough, it's never going to get. Some of our barrels are getting pretty old, and they look like babies still. Like they're never going to get dark, which obviously will never make this. They're never going to be spicy. They're never going to get all that sugar because it's already gone. The other thing I was going to say about straight, American whiskey is weird, and not everybody understands all the ins and outs. And we're not sitting here like a normal whiskey tasting would be in normal non-quarantine times. But normally, if I'm in a group like 30 people at a bar or, at a liquor store or something, and we're going to do a little class, we're going to walk them through product or something. I'd love to ask, first of all, who's ever walked in the liquor store or the bar and asked to look at the corn whiskey? No one has ever raised their hand.
Right.
Ever. And the second thing is asking people what they think straight means. And if they raise their hand and say, who in the room knows what straight whiskey is? And if they raise their hand, I say, okay, you can't answer. Everyone else who doesn't know, what do you think it means? And everybody always says, oh, I assume that means it's 100% corn. Or if I see a straight rye, I'm assuming that's 100% rye.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go, no, it means it's 2 years old. And it's so counterintuitive. There's nothing about that is just like common sense. But it's one of the many ways that the language and the laws around labeling can be confusing for consumers. The other cool thing about straight, so all of bourbon is protected from having any coloring or flavoring added to it. Other whiskeys are not. You can add up to 2.5% by volume of coloring or sweeteners, flavor agents of different kinds, but you can't do that and call it straight. So if you're a purist and you don't want stuff added to your whiskey, bourbon is always safe, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And any straight whiskey means it has not been adulterated with some sort of flavor additive or sweetened or artificially colored.
So yeah, I think that's the other piece that is an added layer of a teachable moment for a lot of people that are beginning to kind of, instead of looking at whiskey or any other spirit as just a means to an end, and that we're beginning to eat better or eat smarter, we're drinking better, we're drinking smarter. That straight to lineage is important to us, of course, because yes, it does mean that these casks are getting much more mature, much rounder, fuller bodied. Really great oak presence. We have incredibly expensive casks, so why not embrace that oak quality? But it also means that there's a factor of kind of honesty and integrity by the fact that we're not adding flavoring and coloring and sweetener. We're too lazy for that anyways, but why in the hell would you want to bastardize high quality distillation and high quality corn by adding things to it? So that straight to lineage is really, it's important, it's powerful. And so I think Jared would be able to speak to it more, but most of our labels, are going to slowly move to that where we can, not because we are adding any sweeteners to anything, because we're not, and we never will. But it's a process. The whiskey still has to taste right. And it has to taste good. You don't just want to rush something to 2 years old just because it needs to have that. So, and again, Jared can expand on that, but it goes beyond, just 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about climate and other things that were challenges at the same time that there were really cool opportunities to do something different. So unlike a lot of people, we've been trying to figure out how to get the stuff older for a while. Once again, because in Texas, one of the easiest things you can do is get it really over oaked really fast. Mm-hmm. And so to have a balanced, kind of harmonious final product. So I think we're probably going to end up with Baby being 2 years old. Like I said, we still have the very first big barrel we ever bought. It's got rum in it. That's a whole different story. But as we reuse barrels, we finally have barrels that no matter how long it stays in there, it's never going to get too woody to be able to be Baby. So some of that stuff is 4, 5, 6 years old now. So I think Baby and Brimstone are probably the only two whiskeys that are still not straight. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah. I think, yeah.
The last batch of rye that just went out is finally straight. And I think those are the only two left. So
yeah, I'm looking at the whole bottles right in front of me, and yeah, you're right.
Hey, we have a couple of Berkner High School legends tuned in here, Skin. Steve Golden and James Ricks, both watching. We greatly appreciate you being here. Lots of folks, if you have questions, feel free to fire off on the YouTube channel, on Facebook. We'll try to get to all that. I'm just curious about, like, with regard to the barrels, why do the specifics of it? Does the bigger the barrel that actually matters?
Yeah, they always talk about the relationship, the ratio between the surface area and the volume. So actually around a 5, 10, 15 gallon barrel is the best ratio of surface volume or surface area to volume. So you have the most, per ounce wood contact at that size barrel. We figured out pretty early that wood extraction, flavor, and sweetness and color and all that stuff was not a problem in Texas. So we've actually spent most of the rest of our time trying to backpedal a little bit and slow down. So the entry proof affects how wood extractives are pulled into the spirit. So yeah, the higher you go in the barrel, the higher the proof when you go in, it's going to be a little bit edgier. It's going to be more tannic. It's going to tend to be more spicy. Right around somewhere between 54, 55, 56 entry proof is this really sweet spot. And I mean, literally sweet. It's one of the kind of sweetest, most well-rounded, a little bit more aromatic, softer finish on it. We still do a lot of experimentation with all that stuff, but barrel size was a big deal. So ours are all 59 gallon. Normal bourbon barrels are 53. And we're actually
this one goes to 11.
Yeah.
This one goes to 11. It's like if everybody else comes with 53, we're coming with 59.
Yeah. I mean, and ironically, it's kind of for the opposite reason. It's to try and make something a little bit softer and a little more elegant and a little bit less one-dimensional. It's just about wood. But yeah, no one's ever written a review. Is this that 18 and up show? I never know.
Yes.
I think you've asked before.
Yes.
I was going to say we've never received a shit sandwich review. But
can they say that? They can.
It's not
say
real.
That.
It's not real.
I can't say that.
If you're somewhat confused, you can watch Spinal Tap when we're done with this tonight.
Yes. Yeah. I'm curious about like let me ask you the dumbest question anyone's ever asked. And so it's just once you make a fantastic whiskey and you've got it in the barrel aging, is there a point of diminishing returns, or if you just leave that sucker in there for 15 years, you're like, it's a Balcones 15, is it just become that much more special, or how does that work?
No, especially not in Texas. I don't think anywhere. I know a couple of Hall of Fame master distillers in Kentucky, and even though they have products that are, 11, 12, 14, 17 years old, not even behind closed doors, but when talking with people they trust, I know some guys that are like, hey man, 9.5 years is really, that's where I think it's really at its best. But we pay for age. Right. We bought into some of the propaganda and marketing that went on during kind of a down phase in bourbon consumption. And the same with Scotch. I was waving at someone leaving the office.
I thought you were giving us away.
There's a gnat.
Guys, stop.
But we're in a really funny phase now because both Scotch and Kentucky bourbon are both trying to undo a lot of what they did in the 70s and 80s while they were sitting on a bunch of whiskey while people were drinking tequila that came in like an AK-47 shaped bottle and stuff like that. Yeah. Beer helmets were real popular. It was a crazy time. But so during that time, there was all this whiskey aging. I mean, it's super affordable. It was a really great time to be a whiskey nerd if you wanted to do some collecting. I mean, honestly, even into the early parts of the 2000s, it was no problem. You want to go buy a barrel that's like a 21-year-old bourbon? Yeah, go, no problem. You'll pay for it, but it's there. Things that just are gone. But they had to figure out a way to add value to these barrels because you do lose spirit over time. So by the time you dump a really old barrel, there's a lot less there to bottle. Not to mention it's basically been taking up real estate. You on the books, somehow you got to figure out a way to charge it rent. It's been taking up space that another barrel could have been in. So they spent a lot of time and a lot of money convincing us that older Scotch and older bourbon were better. And we bought it, literally. We bought into it and we bought it. And now
I did. When I first started drinking Scotch, I was like, well, 18. There's 18 on the menu, and I've got this, money burning a hole in my pocket. I have to get that, right? I mean, that was like when you first start getting into it, you're totally running down that path.
Yeah. And, now that there's been this big whiskey explosion, stocks are low, supplies are low. We've watched the death of a lot of age stated, both bourbon and scotches, Japanese whiskeys. They've just disappeared because there's not enough stock. And if they haven't disappeared, then the price has just skyrocketed because there's not, obviously, an 18, they didn't know 18 years ago that, 8-9 years ago, there was going to be this massive explosion. So they weren't ready to have more 18 available in 2020.
Right.
So now they're doing all this backpedaling to convince us all that taking the age statement away and letting the blender just do his thing. And like, if he needs to use younger whiskeys to make it delicious, why should you care? He's making it the best he possibly can for you. Get over the age statement. And I think younger people are having a better, easier time digesting that new message, which was probably always true, that age doesn't mean crap. I've had 3-year-old scotches that whooped some 25-year-olds that I've had,
Mm-hmm.
But it's really, a lot of that was just marketing. And no offense to anybody who works in marketing who's listening, who might be kin or a friend. But yeah, we got stuff to sell. How do we get people to buy this stuff? And now everyone's doing the opposite. So, but another funny thing as far as how blending goes, every once in a while there'll be like a Macallan 50 or something, some crazy thing come out. I can tell you, at least from my personal experience, it's only, 11, 12 years of doing it, but it is what it is. Barrels that end up around for a long time usually are barrels that you looked at and tried to use and you would have used in a blend many, many times before, and they were just kind of jacked up and you didn't like it. So that's another weird marketing thing. These $12,000 bottles in a crystal decanter come out that are 40 or 50 years old. And actually most people aren't buying that to drink it. So it doesn't really even have to be good. It just has to be rare. But no, it's, I wish you were here. The next time you guys are here, we should find the oldest barrel we can. And I'll show you why older is not better. We've done it with whiskey groups and tours. Like, oh man, when are you guys going to have a 10-year? Like, hey Gabe, let's go find a 6-year-old, pull it. And like, wow, this just tastes like a barbecue pit, like ashtray. It's just like, gripping and tannic and acidic and bitter and spicy. And you can still use barrels like that in a blend. You can use them to give you, in tiny amounts to give the rest of the group some maturity, but by themselves, it's not super appealing. But we're working on that. We're working on for the EU, the biggest legal size for whiskey is 700 liters. So we have some used barrels that we're going to start doing malt in 700 liter barrels. Just for reference, for metric, a 59 gallon barrel is 225. So this is just shy of 3 times that. Or no, somebody else do the math real quick. It's around 3 times that. So it's a big barrel. But that's the legal max for the UK. Obviously, we don't want to make products that they're going to say, hey, that's not whiskey here, for things that we do export. But these are going to be used barrels for malt. And I think our Cooper is pretty close to committed to start making us new barrels that big as well, so that we can start doing experiments with the supersized barrels with bourbon and rye as well for American styles, and see if there is a magic way to do 8, 10, 12 years in Texas without it just ending up being a wood bomb, which some people like, but I kind of have higher hopes than that.
Wood bomb. That's awesome. So one of the things we do on the show is we talk about the whiskeys that we're going to be discussing, and we encourage folks to go buy those bottles so they can taste along with us. It's not mandatory. Obviously, you don't have to have them, but it helps and makes the discussion a little bit more fun. And Steve Dameron says caramel corn nose on the True Blue 100. And he says True Blue may be bumping Baby down the list. He says, my first time trying it. He went out and bought it, which, it's fine, man. If they're all great, but you can power rank them however you'd like. Justin Cannon is here. He's watching, says he's not wearing pants.
All right.
Steve Rosar says Baby Blue will hit you hard if you slam it. You need to sip it on ice. And hey, one of the rules we talk about is you drink it however you want to drink it. Jessica says, every time I watch these whiskey talks, I envy Alex because of the Balcones selection he has behind him. Some really hard to get bottles on that wall. And here's a unique one. Wayne Williams says, real talk, Sean Marion is my legit next door neighbor.
Oh, so that guy lives out in Rockwall. That guy lives on the lake.
Yeah. So he says, yeah. So we're getting lots of feedback tonight, guys.
That's beautiful. Before we move on to the Brimstone, you brought up blending. And I think there's some misconceptions about blending, but it does kind of point out something earlier. Alex held up that bottle and it said single barrel on the bottle. That was, go ahead and pull that bad boy up there again. Cask strength, single barrel, straight corn whiskey. Explain y'all's single barrel program and what you guys are doing with that.
Single barrel program, it's fun. It's a pretty challenging thing because there's a lot of nuances, one to the whiskey, but then just the program in general. And I think for us, for the most part, it's maybe one of the areas that we have an opportunity to really nerd out about the most, typically, and sometimes selfishly, but appropriately, with very like-minded, nerdy people. But the beautiful thing about the single barrel program is that it's still relatively attainable to really anybody and everybody. And so we'll have folks that, they're like, man, I heard you have a single barrel program. I can select my own cask. Like, yes, all 59 gallons plus what might have evaporated. But yes, you can. Like, that's amazing. So I can try different barrels, and instead of them being blended together to go into a bottling, I can choose it and you will bottle it for me and then I can buy it. Yes. And so we, Gabe and Jared and Gabe, they tend to spend a lot of time with these samples. And so, they will often find some things that are pretty off profile that start shooting in weird directions that may spike a blend in the wrong direction. So, we'll move those over and we can explore them to find some more funky, weird, unique nuances that sometimes we can be as tailored as like, hey, I know a guy that really likes, or a buyer somewhere that really likes this kind of expression, or a local whiskey group, or a Ben and Skin Facebook fan group. That really wants to go in on something, split it, and I think they might like this. It sounds like they're going through a lot of True Blue at the store, so I can provide samples of True Blue cask, and we can dig into a lot of those nuances. So one sample, again, this is True Blue cask strength, and look at the color on this. Mm-hmm. The nuance from one barrel to another is pretty insane. So you can oftentimes find things that are so polarizing that they're fantastic on their own. And of course, Jared will sometimes pull those to the side and be like, hey, we want to release this under the, almost the distillery label to in-house ideas. And that's kind of like what you see here with Brimstone. This was a single barrel. And this was released under Jared's watchful eye and released at the distillery. But we can let those wander out pretty far and wide. And so that, of course, is what I'm mostly doing on a day-to-day basis. And True Blue cask is part of that program. So it's definitely going to be an older, more robust, richer whiskey cask strength, so 56 to 63%. On that release, and we won't proof it down. We do a light filter on it, and we bottle it as is. It's a really fun program that's taken off over the last couple of years, and I think surprising to us, but maybe in an encouraging way, it's become a really big part of our business because there's a lot of folks that love our whiskey and love the idea of having something as unique as one of our single barrels. So it's a fun program. And we've met a lot of really cool and great people through it because they do kind of share some of that, that exploration of a cask like we would want to do.
I was going to say single barrel selections are kind of a little bit like, they're similar to me. The dynamic is similar to when we do dinners and food pairing with whiskey, which I'll admit I'm not like a genius at that. I'm not super awesome at it. I appreciate it when it's done well, but a chef, very similar to these accounts that are trying to decide on a barrel, had a really tough call to make. I've seen people try to figure out spend time with a whiskey and like, man, I got to come up with a main course, a savory course to go with single malt that, man, they just go together so seamlessly. It's like the partnership was always supposed to be there. And then I've watched other people take like Brimstone, which we're about to get into, which is pretty rowdy, and put that with like a fish course, like a whitefish, like a super delicate, but they're so different. Things get accentuated that you didn't notice before. Or Brimstone getting used in desserts, especially like dairy based, like creme brulees and stuff. And it's like, man, I would have put it with a meat, right?
Right.
Anyway, so when accounts come in, one of the first things we do to talk to people about single barrel that I think is super important is to figure out just kind of where they think this is going. Some people want, hey, I'm really into True Blue. I want to just pick like, if True Blue was like its best self, I want to pick the most awesome True Blue barrel I've ever had, but they still want to check all the boxes of what True Blue means to them. Some accounts come in and like, man, why would I buy something that already tastes like the one you already released? I want to taste some weird shit. So you never, and that's where Alex has to do a lot of there's a lot of work done on the front end before people ever get samples or whether they come in or whether we ship them to them or deliver them, whatever, to figure out kind of creatively, philosophically, what are they looking for so we can get them the right stuff, because I could send them, and these are the best baby blue barrels I've ever seen. And if they're like, oh, yeah, these taste like the stuff that goes in the bottle, I was looking for something unique. Why would people buy it if it's not unique? Other people say the exact opposite. So, yeah, it's a trick. Alex does a good job with it.
It's a good balance of talents over there at Balcones, I would say. Ben Rogers, are you ready to get your Brimstone on?
Yes, let's do it.
I thought you were. All right, let's do the pour. This is the Brimstone.
This is brought to you by Barbecues. No free ads. No free ads.
I love what it says, Texas Scrub Oak Soaked. That is a very good descriptor of what's about to happen here.
I just want to snort it.
You can do that.
It's not legal.
I'm not sure you can do that.
Ozzy could.
Yeah.
Have y'all clearly either Ben stole someone's bottle or he's had it before. But Skin, you've had Brimstone before, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was y'all's first reaction to Brimstone, if you can remember, or just what is your reaction right now?
Thinking back to my reaction originally was that it's the kind of whiskey that you would take with you if you were going to go camping or something in the fall. Even before you taste it, just the smell of it, it just, I don't know. It's sort of, it's got a ruggedness to it that's appealing, I guess I would say. Ben's got a great descriptor he's used on the radio where he talks about it having the whiskey by a campfire kind of vibe.
Yeah, I'm like, the way music impacts me is if I hear a song that I listen to at a certain time of my life, it immediately floods me back to that time, and I'm flooded with memories from that time. Just by hearing the music, I suddenly remember things I didn't remember or I had forgotten. And when I sip or even smell Brimstone, it takes me to more of a vibe than a specific memory. It takes me to, I'm at a campsite or I'm chilling with friends by campfire. I'm more of a great indoorsman. I'm not a big outdoorsman. So let's just say I'm at a very nice resort that has like a fireplace outside. But it's
you gotta fix that.
Yeah.
Though,
it reminds me of the memories and the celebration you would have around a campfire drinking whiskey.
Okay, let me take it. Let me straddle the line of the Ben world we're talking about there, and in the camping world. You guys, I don't know how much time you guys. I know Ben has spent around a big green egg, but if you've ever done a brisket on a big green egg all day long, you're out there. You can be out there sometimes 6-7 hours, whatever it ends up being, depending on the size and all that. That time that you spend around the big green egg, there's a smell. You know what I'm saying? And when you actually start consuming the brisket, that kind of feels like a part of it. there is a smell to this that feels like you've been standing around the big green egg all day long, and you know
Yeah.
something good is getting ready to come your way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And it's, I would also say for me, it has, obviously some of the signature greatness of the Balcones brand, like from bottle to bottle, expression to expression, there's things that are similar that I can taste that, okay, that's Balcones. But within that space, there's subtle nuance to each one of these expressions that make them incredibly unique. And this, I've never, ever, ever tasted anything like this. I've never tasted something that tastes like a memory or a vibe. I mean, it's just so special.
And you know what else was kind of a unique experience? I think it's a unique experience. I don't know others that do this that at least come to mind. But you feel this on the front part of your tongue, and then you also feel it on the back of the roof of your mouth. Do you guys get that thing going? Like someone's pinging.
Someone's what?
Pinging or something on there. I hear a random renegade.
Oh, I thought you said someone was using the restroom.
Oh no.
Yeah. No, I think this is because we're kind of exploring a lot of corn whiskeys here. The cool thing about this is that, you know, it to a certain degree starts its life just like Baby Blue, just like True Blue, 100% roasted, grown and roasted Texas blue corn. So you get the quality of the corn coming through real flinty, still very like a little bit of like a grassy quality from the smoke, but still very much kind of like that caramelized sugar quality that I think is really cool that you can kind of pick up on True Blue. You get a little bit more of it on True Blue cask, I think, with some of the maturation to it. But that scrub oak obviously it permeates this. And then if you get it on your hands, it kind of, typically what I like to do is I like pull back my shirt collar and then I pour it down my ear in the morning. And then, I think it resonates well with public.
You can totally see though why someone that tastes this really likes this would probably also like a peated type scotch or something like that. I don't know what the spaces in between that would tie those together are, but they feel like they're at least cousins of some kind.
Is it, Jared, is it silly to say this is Texas Scotch?
Well, it's based on corn, so no, because Scotch is barley.
Well, yeah.
We smoke the liquid, not the grain, which is like literally the company's only trade secret, as far as I know.
Yeah, actually, I don't know how it's made. To be totally honest, I don't know. How it's made.
Alex he's got a pretty free hand with his mouth, So we haven't told him. We don't want him to know because who knows where that could go. And honestly, we've had a lot of really interesting feedback over the years of people that are like, "Oh man, I bet it's like this. I bet there's like this massive, huge bong that you're like bubbling oak smoke through all these things." And literally every solution that I've heard other people come up with is way more complicated than how we do it. But we did come up with a process that is pretty unique. So yeah, in Scotland, the process was twofold. In Scotland, obviously they're doing stuff with peat. Historically, that's just because that was the fuel source. That's what people burn in their fireplaces. Even that's what they cook with. If you need to smoke, you need a kiln. You need to dry out the grain. Use the heat source you have available. So thinking once again back in terms of more like cuisine and personality, not just local ingredients, but like local character. The guy we buy wood from, I think all he sells to is barbecue joints and us.
Oh, wow.
So if it does remind people of barbecue, there's a reason. And if you're not familiar with scrub oak's not a species. Neither is shin oak, but these are West Texas and hill country oak trees that live in really dry climates with really crappy soil. And they're almost like a bonsai version of an oak tree. So it could be 4 feet tall, 6 feet tall, and be 80 years old. It's just gnarled and twisted. There's really not a lot you can do with it. You can't build. It's not straight enough to be built with. It's a lot of knots in it. So what do? You live in Texas, you cook with it. So if it reminds people of brisket, reminds people of ribs, it's because it's exactly that kind of wood.
I thought
We do-
I thought on this bottle, I thought scrub was a process. I didn't realize that was a style of oak. I thought it was something
scrub
that you
oak.
do to the oak. Okay, how about that?
Yeah. I mean, when you think of like what's most synonymous with Texas, I think right the original plan was to smoke the whiskey with footballs, but that was going to be dumb. So so what else is most synonymous with Texas lifestyle? And of course, it's eating good barbecue.
Right.
So yeah, naturally, scrub oak trees, they don't provide a lot of shade. So yeah, you can't really use them shade, or like Jared said, you're not going to build much out of it. You can build a pretty good whiskey out of it. Jared, why 53%?
In the early days, I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but there's kind of if you have like an XY with body, texture, mouthfeel on one, and then you've got aroma on the other. Aroma typically is going to get improved with a little water, right? It keeps opening up. It keeps getting a little more expressive.
Volatile, yeah.
Mouthfeel and texture and fullness, density of flavor, how concentrated everything is. Obviously, the more you're adding water, that's kind of getting stretched out. So there's kind of supply and demand, right? If you can figure out the sweet spot for you on where the aroma is right, or what you're sacrificing in body, what you're getting from aroma is good enough to be worth it. You know what I mean? So early years, a lot of our products were different every time. Every bottling went out, and both Brimstone and Malt both, after maybe like, I don't know, eight months or a year or so of every bottling being slightly different, I realized they were only varying like 0.5%. So the first handful of malt that went out, for example, it was like the lowest one was like 52.7, the highest one was 53.2. And I was like, turns out we like it kind of around 53. And just to explain too, we would get a blend done and we would literally do a whole line of glasses on the table, like 1%, 1 ABV apart. And sometimes even then half an ABV apart, and pick where we thought it was best. So 53 is kind of a sweet spot for us in house. You get a lot of texture. It's coating. It's sticky. It almost feels, it has some dessert sauce, density to it and heft, without being just completely dead on the nose, which some cast strength whiskeys can be a little bit kind of muted just because they're such a high proof. But I was going to say too, as someone who doesn't do a lot of cocktails, this is another whiskey. Today's kind of a weird episode, starting with Rumble and ending with Brimstone, and we already knew that. Yeah. We're kind of getting into like the outer rim of product range. Brimstone people are rabid haters and lovers, which is probably not surprising. There's people that literally have walked up to a table at a whiskey show and told me, "I don't know why you make this. Please stop."
Why do they care?
That doesn't sound pretentious at all.
Well, to be fair to them, that was the person who told me that was years ago when it was really hard to get some of our stuff where they live. And they were like, I can't keep single malt on the shelf. And yet you're spending some of your production time on this crap. Please stop. Okay. And then literally, I'm not making this story up. If I tried to make it up, I couldn't make it up any better than it actually was. That guy moves on. Literally the next guy comes up and he's like, "Hey man, I brought my buddy over here. He needs to try Brimstone. I don't know why you guys make anything else."
I think like as far as things that I would recommend to people in the Balcones family, I think Brimstone would be down the list unless I knew that they were like a really, I don't want to say experienced whiskey consumer, but someone that I knew had tried a lot of different things and had experienced a lot of different styles of whiskey, because it does, I think, exist in such a unique kind of space. There's things that when you're getting somebody into something, you go for familiarity, right? So that they get their comfort zone first. And it's just really hard to pin down Brimstone for other experiences, whiskey experiences.
Or you dive into the deep end. For me, I'm not a super experienced whiskey drinker by any means, but this became one of my early favorites. I would recommend it to anyone who likes drinking by campfire.
Hey Ben, so you're a baby blue old fashioned guy, Ben, right?
Yes, I love baby blue. Drink some old fashions.
Have you experimented with? Obviously, it's a really quick, easy thing to do. Putting just like a very small amount of Brimstone in the glass, your glass that you're going to put your old fashioned in with Brimstone, roll it so it kind of soaks the inside of the glass, and then build your old fashioned with baby blue. It's awesome.
Okay. Because some places, some bars, you go to a nice bar and you get an old fashioned, they take out a wood plank and they burn the plank and they get the smoke coming off it. Then they use that smoke in the glass, and they're just basically trying to get what you already have here, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a bunch. I'm not the most massive cocktail guy, but Brimstone is another one that ends up either tagging along for a smoky cocktail, like maybe a mezcal based cocktail, or I've had some in Bloody Marys, like anything where you think smoke kind of makes a little bit of sense. But I mean, obviously with an old fashioned, either as the main whiskey or as, if you're already going to put an ounce and a half, maybe it's a quarter of this and a 1 1/4 of the other. But the other cool thing is, because this is made with the same blue corn as all the other corn whiskeys we've got, I've met people on the road who dig it, but think it's a little much when it's 100% the smoked. And they're either adding it to TB100, or they're adding it to baby, or they're using a little baby in the Brimstone to cut it. So we really do have a handful of other products that are basically the unsmoked components of what goes into this, that you can, once again, you can kind of tailor fit. If you just want like a hint of it, you can rinse your glass. If you want it half and half with baby, cool. If you want it half and half with TB100, whatever. There's a bunch of different ways to go about using it. And the idea of making something that's polarizing, there's the idea of making something that everybody is like, yeah, it's fine. That's what you do, or you can make something that people actually have a reaction to. And that reaction sometimes is going to be really positive and sometimes really negative. But the other alternative is to make, the Applebee's of whiskey, which
okay.
is.
I have to say this because I love this so much. And I can't remember if we've talked about this on Whiskey Talk before, but we often use our whiskey discussions to spiral us off into talk of sports or music or whatever. And I'm always telling people they've got to watch the Sri Lanka documentary on Showtime about Rick Rubin buying the studio that the band, if you've ever seen the Scorsese movie, The Last Waltz, that's where the band was recording at that time period. In fact, there's a scene in The Last Waltz where they're playing pool at Sri Lanka, and Rick Rubin has taken over this studio and recorded all these great artists there. But he's talking to a Jewish spiritual leader, and they're having a conversation. This is a 4-part series. It's incredible. And they're having a conversation about why you do the things you do and people's reaction to those things. And Rick Rubin is talking about music. But what he said is exactly what you just said, Jared. He said, if you made something that generally everybody kind of likes, then it's probably not really that fucking good. If you're truly making something that's striving to be excellent, it's going to divide people, because so many people are just complacent and just exist in this path in the middle. And when you're explaining that reaction to Brimstone, I couldn't help but sit there and think about Rick Rubin talking about music. And I got real excited.
Yeah, I had no idea until right this moment that he had took that from me. So that's really cool.
Yeah, he credited you later in the movie. There's a credit at the very end.
Copyright. Yeah.
But go see Sri Lanka it's on Showtime.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's kind of funny. It's one of those just sales numerics thing. But Brimstone in New York is our, at least up until recently, over the last few years, it was our number 1 selling whiskey in New York.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like far and
cool.
Of, it was, New York, obviously there's a lot of places, a lot of bars, a lot of liquor stores, a lot of restaurants, but they're very tiny, for the most part. They just have a lot of foot traffic because there's a lot of people. So limited shelf space. So, you might go to the Nook, or, you might go to, a local independent store, and you'll see 14 Balcones, their shelf might look like this. If they're a big Balcones supporter, which is awesome. But you go into New York and they're like, okay, I'm looking at a sea of whiskey that you presented to me. What stands out the most? And it ends up being Brimstone to them also, because New York has trash barbecue. No offense. any New Yorkers, because I haven't tried all the barbecue, but obviously we're Texans, so we eat a lot of really good, a lot of mediocre, and most of it's really good barbecue around the area. So to them, this is like the most polarizing, amazing, just kind of light bulb going off moment of like, this is amazing, this is insane. So it's really funny to see that, because there's a lot of fantastic places in New York that they're like, oh, I work for Balcones if they're on a trip, and they're like, oh my gosh, and they like reach behind a bunch of things, and then they pull, and you're like, look, and you're like, that's awesome, and they're like, it's so smoky. So it's this is a cool whiskey that really it travels quite far. I've just always, it's always been fascinating, but I think it's because like this flavor to us there's nostalgia in this bottle, and to New Yorkers this is almost foreign, because barbecue is not quite as
dude, what, they're not barbecuing, that it's hard to get to a campfire. I mean, if you made a whiskey that tastes like a barrel of trash burning, it's like, with people singing around it. But no, it's it's the great outdoors. You got to drive out of the city to get it. So if you can have a cocktail in the city, that's perfect.
Yeah. Or they could go to the Catskills. Isn't it extraordinary that you can get one of the most exquisite meals in the world in New York, and they don't know how to do barbecue or Mexican food? It's just astonishing. All right, boys, we're an hour into this thing. So I think we say good night. Any parting shots from anybody before we head out into the wilderness to reconvene in this exact spot 2 weeks from now?
Well, I want to jump in here. Jared, you were talking about coming us if we were at the distillery, and good God, I would love that to go find the oldest barrel. And obviously these are uncertain times. We don't really know when everything's going to be back to normal, or if it'll ever be back to normal. But man, as soon as we are able to come to the brewery, just know we're coming, and we're posting up, and I make camp inside of the distillery, but we would love to come hang out with you guys and come. We're so proud to partner with you guys, and would love to come see you guys in person.
Ben, we owe a road trip to Balcones to our good friend Will Eubanks. He donated to a charity, so we've got to make that happen really soon. Get on up there and re-explore, because the last time I was at Balcones, I guess it's been a year and a half, and it's been too long, because that is a fantastic place for sure.
Well, I know they're looking at, and Jared might be able to talk a little bit more about it. He's obviously closer because he's in the distillery, but I know there's conversations going on about what it looks like to reopen, whether that is phase by phase or a full reopen. I'm not sure. So we should get something on the books tentatively, soon, so that we can go hang out again.
Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're still doing stuff to go right now. We're probably going to start doing some stuff under the big live oak tree in the parking lot, and some added tent space and some other stuff to be able to have people come hang out and drink safely pretty soon. I don't know about internal tours. We've been pretty protective of the production crew for obvious reasons.
Right.
I think my 9-year-old might be the only person who doesn't work at the distillery, who's been in the production area in the last 3 months. But obviously if somebody in here gets sick, that's a bad look. So
right.
Not that anything we're doing is completely, we all know there's risks being taken, and there's things, whatever everybody does the best you can, do what you're comfortable with. Don't jeopardize others. Don't be a dick. The end of that rant. But yeah, we'd love to give you guys that. We could probably, if you guys wanted to come up, we could probably, we've already done some single barrel picks with distance groups and stuff. Have 3 people in and stuff. So if you guys wanted to come up, we could probably figure that out. And it's a big space downstairs. We can make room. So
do you guys like cigars?
Yes.
I'm always down to, I'm not a heavy smoker, but I always enjoy a cigar from time to time. I think fun experience.
Yeah, we both got into it for a little while. You had a humidor for a while, right, Skin?
I still have it over here.
Okay. So I had a humidor for a while. I tailored it off as my basketball increased, my cigar smoking decreased, but I enjoy a fine, smooth cigar.
Michael Jordan, all he did was smoke cigars. Ben, you should smoke more, and then you'll be hanging on the rim, homie.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. You'll cross over everybody. AI, MJ, it doesn't matter. Yeah, more cigars, longer, more expensive.
Why do you ask, Alex Elrod?
Jared knows a lot about cigars, so it's very fascinating to hear him speak to flavor, complexity, density of a roll, all these things that are very foreign to me, but I do enjoy cigars. And so obviously there's something quite magical about an evening and whiskey and camaraderie and sports and music. I mean, we just got like NHL, proposed playoffs. So like NHL's coming back. I know they're talking about some NBA, but so I mean, maybe some sports.
Look, I want to hang much sooner than that, but I'll tell you what, a late October evening of brimstone and cigar smoking sounds really effing spectacular.
Yeah, that does sound great.
All right, gentlemen.
I know we usually try to wrap things up, and music hasn't come up, so I've got two.
Oh, let's go.
I've got two to throw out. One, it just hit me while we were talking, that's relevant to kind of the isolation that people are probably feeling. And I've been still working, and I've got a house full of kids at home and a new puppy. So like, I'm not struggling with what I think a lot of people have been experiencing.
Right.
I've also got land. I can go outside. Anyway, are either one of y'all familiar with Kate Tempest?
I'm not.
Rapper from the UK, female.
Wait,
fantastic.
Does she
poet.
do like some kind of spoken word stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, she's actually in that Rick Rubin documentary. She recorded at Sri Lanka.
Okay, badass.
I'm pretty sure that's who I saw.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. But she has a concept album called "Let Them Eat Chaos" that everybody should check out. But it starts out, the bookends are that this is a block, maybe even just a building in London where all these people live, and it's 3 a.m. and everyone's awake and nobody can sleep, and it kind of, every song goes through each individual person's life.
Yeah.
But it wraps up at the end in this really rad way. So the very last song, it starts raining in the middle of the night. Everyone's awake anyway, and they all go downstairs. And when they walk out into the street, standing in the rain, getting drenched, is this moment when they realize, I'm not the only one. And there's other people that are in this situation, even though all their lives are really radically different. But it just hit me while we were talking that album, especially that last track that kind of brings it all to a climax, is actually really pretty relevant to stuff we're going through. The other shout out I want to give, completely irrelevant, genre switch to metal, but Aaron Turner of ISIS fame, originally Sumac. One of his projects is Old Man Gloom, and they have two kind of partner albums that just came out together, Seminar 8 and 9. And they're both super rad, and I listened to them on repeat while I mowed the lawn this weekend.
Oh, right on.
Oh,
I'm always down to check out some metal. I just looked this up, and I'm about 99% sure that Sri Lanka documentary has Kate Tempest recording "Let Them Eat Chaos," and then at the end of that episode, she does a full live version of it. Does it have a lot of like almost ambient kind of found sound going on in the background, like soundscape type stuff?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't even really have a beat to it. Like it's looped stuff without like a drum, like an articulated drum beat to it.
I'm very confident.
Really well done.
Wow, very cool, man. Right on.
Hell yeah.
Well, ending on a high, baby. Thank you, boys. I enjoyed it. We will, of course, we encourage you to follow all the Balcones social media platforms. And as we ease into these whiskey talks, we want to give you a heads up as to what we're going to be talking about so you can enjoy it with us. So make sure and follow on Twitter and Instagram, and Balcones has an incredible social media presence for sure.
They do
indeed. He's Alex. That's Jared. That's Ben. I'm Skin. Yes. Until next time, enjoy some fine brown, my friends.
Cheers.
Peace.